enough for everybody.
Well,
Right.
This
Speaking of, we're live.
See, there we go.
Boozy Book Brads has spoiled it for me so that any author panel I do now, I immediately get a drink.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the process.
Which sometimes for me, I'm, because I'm in California time, sometimes events will start at like 3:00 my time. I mean, I still have to get it out of the way.
it's 5 o'clock
We
somewhere.
need to celebrate this somehow.
Hour. So good evening, everyone. If you're joining us live, we are the Boozy Book Broads, and we are excited to bring you tonight's romance retellings panel. We decided to mix things up in 2022, and we're so thrilled to kick things off with this amazing panel of romance authors of modern contemporary romance retellings. I'm Melanie Johnson, my fellow Boozy Book Broads, Danielle Jackson, and Angelina M. Lopez. So just a couple quick reminders. So we are all here thanks to Love Sweet Arrow. So make sure that you go to lovesweetarrow.com to pick up all of the books by any of the fabulous people you see here tonight, the hostesses, the other authors, everyone. They have all of our books in stock, and you can support a fabulous independent bookstore that way. We have our room mom for the evening, Danielle. So she will be moderating the chat all evening, monitoring it as well, checking to make sure everyone is, so if you're commenting, if you're answering the questions that we ask, if you're kind of contributing to the conversation, she's seeing it all, and she'll read some of your comments out loud. And she will also definitely keep track of questions that you have for our panel members, and we'll try to make sure to get to all of those as well. So we're going to get started here with our great panel. We always like to talk about what we're drinking. So if you didn't grab a drink, that's okay. You could tell us what your favorite cocktail is. Tonight, I'm just sticking with a simple Pinot Grigio. Danielle, what have you got tonight?
Hang on one. Okay. I was like putting in the chat. What's everyone drinking? I am with my usual heavy pour. And this is a great, it's a Pinot Grigio Rosé blend. From Trader Joe's. It's so good. And I'm gonna digress a bit. When I bought like 2 bottles because it's that great, right? And the woman at Trader Joe's, she was like, okay, we didn't know that they were gonna keep bringing this wine in. We thought it was just a special for Valentine's Day. So she bought a case, and then they started getting more of it in. And she's like, and I'm gonna buy another case because who knows how long it's gonna be here. So highly recommend it. I don't remember the brand, but it's a Pinot Grigio Rosé blend.
Very nice. Angelina, are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking a Manhattan, and in honor of, I've made a little video that I posted on Instagram to welcome all our guests, but in honor of modern retellings, this is a Manhattan, and it's kind of you're supposed to stir, not shake. And when we make Manhattans in our household, we shake the crap out of them. So there's like ice crystals. And apparently it's like, when we ask bartenders to do that, they like give us evil looks, but it's delicious and it stays cold and it's lovely. And that's how I did it. So I made a little TikTok in honor of you guys like reinventing and claiming tales for yourselves. So this is the Lopez Lundquist household, very cold, ice crystal-y Manhattan in honor. So Manhattan, cheers, ladies, thanks for coming.
Very nice. I like how the bartenders are like just in shock. No, I cannot. It goes against the code.
Evil eye, gift the evil eye.
And Sonali, who is just back in the States. So thank you so much for joining us after your amazing trip. If you follow her on social media, she's been posting some fabulous pictures of her experiences. So thanks for joining us, even though you probably haven't been off the plane very long. No. I saw you do have a drink. What are you drinking?
So this was my panic put together drink. So we should panic Boozy Broad because I was coming to this panel, and the only thing I could find in the fridge that my kids had while I was gone was this Italian blood orange soda. And then, of course, everything is better with Grey Goose, so there's some vodka in it.
You never go wrong with a little bit of vodka, and yeah, that's pretty much anything.
It's quite delicious. It needs a dash of lemon, and then it'll be perfect. Maybe a slice of habanero.
Ooh, I love.
Oh, wow.
Into a cocktail. Oh, like a jalapeno margarita. Perfect. All right. So if you're not drinking booze, that's okay. You can tell us about your favorite cocktail as well. Priscilla, how about you?
Okay, I am drinking, I poured not a heavy pour because I'm going to try to do some work afterwards. But so I have Rioja from Spain, but I'm also treating myself just got to Brooklyn. And so the first place I stopped was Court Street Bagels here in Brooklyn. And so I got a cookie yesterday and I only let myself eat half. And so I saved the other half for
Wait,
tonight.
that is half the cookie.
I
what
know,
you
that's
just
an-
said?
Yeah, it was huge. It was huge. Well, it's probably like if I cut here. So it's a little bit more than half, but I had a bagel.
I'm just impressed that you got a cookie yesterday and there's still some left today.
Well, I ate a bagel with it. So I was like, you do not need a bagel and a cookie, please. But it seemed all the sprinkles and were kind of festive. So I was, it's perfect for tonight.
Very well.
Chris, that level of self-discipline is why you are such an accomplished author. I mean,
Oh
my
my
God,
gosh,
about you.
And make sure those of you that are joining us tonight, I think Danielle already posted, but you can let us know what you're drinking as well.
Yes.
Nisha, how about you?
So I generally don't drink a lot of alcohol, but in honor of today, I am having spiked ice cream. So it's called it's called Tipsy Scoop.
Oh,
And it's from a place in New York. And so this is spiked hazelnut coffee ice cream, and it tastes like a mudslide. It
oh
is
my God.
so
I have not
good.
had a mudslide in so long. I can't even
Wow. Where in New York?
Delicious. I'm not sure where.
Like,
We got
I'm in
it
New
off
York.
of Goldbelly. So we ordered it off of like their site on Goldbelly.
Oh,
Like
awesome.
my best friend is the one who like hooked me onto this. She sent me like a bunch of flavors once, and they have like sorbets. They have like stuff that like so many different flavors. But the hazelnut coffee is like straight up like a mudslide. It's so good.
I didn't
Wow.
even know that it was that was a thing. And I bought a Haagen-Dazs, like a vanilla bourbon truffle ice cream. And I'm like, I opened the can, like the top, and I'm like, this smells like, this is whiskey. What is it? And I realized, yeah, they have actual alcohol. It's not like cooked off in the ice cream.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Jasmine, how about you? I know you might not have had time to grab a drink, but if you were to grab one.
I know I am the teetotaler tonight, which is rare for me. I just have water here. But I wish I was drinking some champagne.
Ah, there you go.
Mm.
And
I'll put that
honestly,
out
again,
later.
Boozy Book Broads were all about, it's just about the indulgence factor. So
Yes.
it doesn't have to be alcoholic. And good for you I never make my water intake of the day.
Oh.
Like I have all
I was
these
running around all day, so I'm like, I should drink some water. And I also always lose my voice during these things, so it's good to have water around.
Yeah, hydrate is important. I no matter how often I use those apps, I still can never get to the
The apps stress me out. They feel like did you try the like water your plant one? Oh, your plant is dying. You haven't been drinking enough water. I can't do it. I have enough anxiety in my life as it is. Like, I don't want to be worried about an imaginary plant. No.
This is why that whole steps thing really bothers me. I mean, I get that it's really healthy, but if I have to count, then it kind of
Yeah.
Yes. There are enough things that we all need to worry about. Like, just I need to feel like I got exercise. Okay, like I don't need to worry about how many numbers.
I'm not a good water sipper. Like if I have a cup of water at my desk, it'll stay there and then I'll just chug it. So if I'm the days like you, like you, Melanie, I'm not good at like getting my water intake. So the days that I'm trying to watch it, as I pass through our kitchen, we have a water dispenser. And so I just keep a cup by the fridge and I'll stop and I'll fill up the cup and just chug it and then keep on going. And I'm like, okay, I got some and then go back. But if there's a cup of water, I could be at my desk for a couple hours and it's still there until I pick it up and I chug it. Like I just forget to sip.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna like jump into the conversation now. And again, if you're watching, you can answer this question as well. This is just a kind of little fun icebreaker to get us going, talking about retellings. And so I would love to hear what you can answer this one of two ways. You can let me know like your favorite romance retelling ever, like if there's a version of Cinderella or Beauty and the Beast that you adore, or if there's a specific origin story that you love and that you will see any version of it when it's retold. So we're going to kind of go in reverse order here. So Jasmine, we'll start with you.
Oh, of course I have to start. I gotta say, like a lot of the Jane Austen books, like Pride and Prejudice and Emma, I will read or watch like any of them. And it's funny because like it's not that I like those books a lot, but they're not like my favorite books in the world, but I adore the retellings. Like they're always so fun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so any Austen retelling is going to get your attention.
Yeah.
I totally appreciate and understand.
Yeah. Maybe I feel like people should, and I know that Sonali has been like going in on this, but like do some of the less common Austen books. I would be all in on those.
Interesting. It's everyone's wheels are turning now.
Yeah.
Nisha, how about you?
So I don't have a simple answer, and I never have a simple answer, so I'm just apologizing in advance. But I'm going to tell you all of my answers. So I'd have to say I agree with Jasmine. I will watch every retelling of Pride and Prejudice that exists. Like that's just, automatically. My favorite though adaptation or retelling in like movie form is 10 Things I Hate About You, which is Taming of the Shrew. So that was like kind of the genesis of like the story that I ended up writing. And then what I'm working on right now, and these are just straight like story presentations of much. Wait, I'm sorry.
We're going to talk about that at the end.
Yeah, no, but we'll get to that. What I'm watching right now, which I'm obsessed with, is the Kenneth Branagh, Emma Thompson version of Much Ado About Nothing.
Yes.
The best.
So amazing.
That's my answer.
I have that poster up in my little mini like workout room. I don't know why that's where it is, but that's where it is. The Much Ado About Nothing poster.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be in my classroom when I was an English teacher, even though it says like vibrant, sexy romp, and I had like, I'm teaching, sophomore English, but I
will say though that like the Shakespeare in the Park version of Much Ado About Nothing, which you can also find on the Globe Theater website if you're interested in watching it, is so freaking fantastic. It's delicious. I highly recommend that one as well.
Okay. All good recommendations. Pris, how about you? Priscilla?
First of all, I'm like hoping I can make a mental note, but Nisha, if tomorrow I like text you and be like, what did you say about that? It was a definite recommend, then just, this is what I'm talking about. Both of you, I think for me also like reading, but also watching, like there's something about Jane Austen. So Sonali is doing it right. That I will, any Jane Austen, but I will say since we kind of veered into film, my next answer was going to be, and Nisha kind of took it, like the Kenneth Branagh, like the Shakespeare retellings. He's done a couple of those, and both of them, or the two that I've seen anyway, I've really enjoyed. And I think that mix of enjoying them in film is what kind of also then led me to, and in college as like an English major, reading them is what led also to like my current series the same way. But there's just something about them. They hit on beats, or they speak to me as, romance and as a literature, someone who loves literature. So I think any of those adaptations, I'm totally down for in book form or also in film form.
Sonali?
Yeah, so first my dog just farted, so I'm on my lap.
But no.
What just happened here? But so my favorite, I think, retelling is Bridget Jones' Diary, the book, not the movie. And I think it has to do with just how much, I think I was just the right age when I read it. And having a heroine who measures her thighs and is that neurotic, it was, I think, the first time where I actually found myself in a book. And I had a friend mansplain to me and say, who does that? And I was like, I do. And I'm pretty certain almost every woman I know has measured her thighs at some point. So it's brilliant. It's the exact kind of humor that speaks to me, all of that. And I also love how it's so interpretive, which is what I love about retellings, when they are an entirely new story that's just inspired by something that sparked something in the writer's brain. So that's, I think, my favorite retelling. But there's also, everyone's been talking about Shakespeare. There's an Indian filmmaker named Vishal Bharadwaj, who does, who's done Macbeth. It's called Makbul. He's done Omkara, which is Othello, and this is not flashy, chorus dancing Bollywood. This is earthy, mobsters, just really gritty kind of Hindi films. And I think his interpretations are brilliant because, again, they completely take on this new story, but really, really brilliant. And anything with Romeo and Juliet, there's something about defying your family and your world. That's just, how can you go wrong? Right, Chris?
Well, usually a lot of things go wrong, but how can
yes.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. I was obsessed with that story when I was like 12, so I get it. So from our broads as well, Angelina.
I'm a Bronte girl. It's funny. My uncle, when I was in 6th grade, sent me the Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre, and these beautiful tiny books, and I still have them with this very, very thin paper. And I would read them on the bus, and I just fell in love with this extra angsty world that when I read Austen, I was like, but where's the, grid? Where's all of the A? And Wuthering Heights, I was like, what's wrong with these two? But Jane Eyre, for this girl to be like, I have nothing, and I will still go throw myself on the moor and get lost in the moor before I give over, before I change myself to please you. I will still go out into the wilderness before I change who I inherently have to be to please you. It really struck home for a 6th, 7th grader. So now, like every single time somebody does Jane Eyre, I'm all there for it, but nobody's done it better than Timothy Dalton back in like 85, the BBC. It's so hot. And I just like, if I need a hero, and again, it's not Timothy Dalton, but that character and her staunchness, I just go back and watch that over and over again. If you haven't seen it, BBC, Timothy Dalton, it literally, I think it's like 80, I think it's like 88, and you can like Google it. And I have the VHS tapes, so.
Do you still have a VHS player?
I have the VHS. I have it because I have the VHS tapes.
Oh my gosh. Because we have a million VHS tapes and we have like 2 VHS players, but none of them work.
I literally have kept my the TV with the insert that I took to college with the insert. I've kept it because
you gotta keep
reasons. Romance reasons.
Oh, actually, if you look over here, you can't actually see it. I have a boombox over there. It's my tape, and below it are my tapes and my CDs. Like,
oh my God, I love it.
Save it all because it's all going to come back around again. My youngest just took all my CDs. She found my Green Day CD, and
I love. I never quit.
So Danielle, I'd love to hear your favorite, and then maybe read a couple from the chat as well.
Yeah, of course. So I think my favorite, I'm going to jump on the Jane Austen bandwagon, but my absolute hands down favorite is Clueless. I think it is possibly it's definitely the best movie adaptation of Emma. But as a pairing, Farrah Heron's Camilla Knows Best just came out, and I flew through that, and that is also an Emma retelling, so I highly recommend that as well. A lot of people are sharing the love for Austen adaptations. They love Persuasion. Pam Roberts also said she likes modernized Greek mythology retellings, which are definitely having a moment right now.
And I actually saw a really good thread recently on, it was probably Twitter, but about like that there are so many other mythologies out there, and I'm hoping we start to see more of.
I agree, 100%.
That's interesting.
Charlene mentioned Eloisa James's fairy tale series. She has a bunch. That are really great. 10 Things I Hate About You has come up a bunch of times. Yeah. And then when you were talking about cookies, Priscilla, I just want to say a lot of people are talking about bagels as well. So there's like a hunt to find the great bagel in various.
Well, if you were in the Brooklyn area, let me know and I can give you a couple places, because the last time I was here, one of my girls and I Googled. And so we tried 3 or 4 different places in Brooklyn.
Love it. Yeah. Okay.
Totally just for research. No.
So yeah, so keep interacting in the chat. I will pop in when somebody has something cool to say.
Yeah. So my favorite as well, 10 things I hate about, I mean, any Shakespeare retelling I am going to probably show up for, but I have a special place in my heart for 10 things.
Yeah.
Just what a beautifully way that they modernized it, but still kept some of the actual lines. I just, I love it. So we're going to go ahead and dive into what we like to call the full bottle. This is kind of where we dig deep into the discussion with our author guests. So again, if you have questions or if things come up as you're listening, you can pop those in the chat and Danielle will keep track of them. So we're going to, kind of keep things basic because we have a group of you, but, give us a little bit of room to kind of dig into under the surface as to what drew you to these stories and why you wanted to write that particular retelling. So, I mean, what was it about, for Beauty and the Beast or for Jane Austen or for Romeo and Juliet that drew you and made you wanted to tell that retelling? Priscilla, we'll start with you.
Sure. Okay. So my book, and it's like way back there, is West Side Love Story. So it's like, it's a Romeo and Juliet. And I think I kind of alluded to it before, like one of the favorite, I was an English major in undergrad. And I just have like all these fond memories like that Shakespeare class. If I could go back to college, I would like retake that class. And I actually finished my degree. I was already married. We were stationed in Okinawa, Japan. So when we were studying Hamlet, we actually, for class, one evening we met at some castle ruins and we read aloud Hamlet as it like the sun set, and we were reading with flashlights, and it just, I just have like emotional memories of those stories. And same thing, like I glom on retellings of them and adaptations, film adaptations. And so I think we talk about like, write what you love, write what you know, or what you're interested in researching, right? Because you need to get it right on the page if it's something that you're not familiar with. And so I think because of my love of Shakespeare, my love of romance, and like what we talked about before, like two people, like how they say star-crossed lovers, right? But there's so much conflict between them. How can they overcome? And so that kind of drew me. And my flip on it is one thing I like to do is kind of like take readers home. And with my last series, I took readers home to Key West, where I grew up. And this time I'm taking readers home to where my papi, where my dad was born and raised, San Antonio. And so my twist on it is in feuding familias, they're kind of on different sides of the gentrification line, but they're also feuding because they're in different mariachi bands. And
okay, yeah,
so
we're going to talk
that
more
kind
about
of thing.
like,
But so mostly just was a combination of a story I love and like what we talk about, how can we make it our own?
Make it our own. Yeah, definitely. So going to our other Shakespeare retelling here, Nisha, with Taming of the Shrew. I've told you this before, but as soon as I saw that like announcement, that you posted from Publishers Marketplace, I was like, give it to me now. So with the whole, like, because it's a series, there's going to be more, which we're going to get to later as well. But like with the series, why start with this one? Why start with Taming of the Shrew?
Because it was the hardest.
Oh!
And I'm always one to kind of try to get the hardest one out of the way, to be honest. And it was the one to be frank, it was the one I had the hardest time like seeing on the page. So like it was just stuck in my mind trying to like unpack it. And so the concept of the story basically started a few years ago when I was visiting the Folgers Library in DC. The Folger Library in DC is the largest private collection of Shakespeare folios. And there's so many of them because scholars can't really determine which one was the original version of Shakespeare's plays. Because he would basically customize the plays based on his audience. And that's what really sparked the inspiration for the story. If Shakespeare could customize these major themes and concepts for different audiences, what if I took these global concepts that I really connected with reading Shakespeare and applied it to a South Asian lens, specifically a third diaspora lens. Like my lens is very particular because I'm American born Desi. And so I wanted to kind of put it in that perspective. And so it started like many of our stories start with a call to my editor. And I was like, well, what if, just go with me here, what if Shakespeare was like an auntie who gave really bad dating advice, and like,
You're like, I'm in.
what happens if that, like if I take all of these like Shakespeare comedies and I apply it to I apply it through like my experiences, and also like my history as a romance reader. Like I've been dedicated to the romance genre since I was like in the 7th grade, and I discovered Nora Roberts. So, I have like 3 friends who fall in love with 3 friends, which is like Nora Roberts trademark. And then I have like a Lady Whistledown character, and I have, so like, it's also like my love affair with the romance genre.
So it feels like there's going to be some winks and nods for Romancelandia in general, which is just amazing. I love it.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, that's my relationship with Taming of the Shrew.
So we're going to shift from Shakespeare over to Austen. So Sonali, can you tell us a little bit about you? Now you've had multiple. This is number 4 in the series. So you're finally getting, this one is Emma. So since you've had 4 of those out there, I want to ask you like a and question. Which of these was your favorite?
My own book or Austen's book?
No, which of the Austen stories was the one, like you started with Pride, Prejudice and Other Flavors. Was that the one that like appealed to you the most, or like Nisha, did you go after the hardest one first?
So it was all a bit organic, I think, for me, because I couldn't tell you my favorite. I think there is something about each one of them that really speaks to me. I don't think of these as retellings, really.
Right. We're gonna talk more. I know you have a great answer for this, so I'm gonna save it.
Save it. Okay. So what do you want me to talk about, Melanie?
I want to talk about why pick Austen. What drew you to Austen?
So I, again, like Nisha, was in 7th grade when I was first exposed to her. And, ironically, I was exposed to her through a retelling, which was Bombay in 1984. And there was a TV show called Trishna, which was a Hindi language scene by scene retelling of Pride and Prejudice. Oh. And it's amazing how well the angst of trying to get 5 daughters married off translated into 1984 India. And it, and the whole, what will people say, societal pressure. And this was the first time I saw a heroine who didn't pander. Who didn't change herself, who did not temper her opinions to have the opposite sex like her or the aunties like her. And it spoke to something intrinsically inside me.
Angelina, I'm thinking of your answer too, like really kind of thing,
yeah. It made who I was okay. And I was like, what is this, amazing stuff? And of course, the heroine wanted things. She dug in her heels, and she didn't end up dead or losing her mind or somehow miserable. So all of it was very delightful and life altering to me. So so I ran to my school library, checked it out, and have read that and the other 3. These are my 4 favorite Austen novels. And again, in my head, it was always related. The Bennets knew the Dashwoods, they all knew each other, they lived in the same world in my head. And so it was going to happen where they were going to come together under this, one story umbrella. So that was the dream. So these are homages to lessons specifically that I learned from each one, of these books that I think defined who I became.
I love that.
It's really not even about the writer I became, but about the person I became. What I believe about love comes from persuasion. What I believe about myself and how I should interact with people I don't agree with comes from Pride and Prejudice. So it's, Sense and Sensibility is about being okay with us, with wanting to be good, even when the world kind of is not being that. So these were all kind of things that I learned. And Emma, and I will say this about the Emma project before before I let you move on, because I can see you go. But to me, really, Emma is about someone, someone who is in a place of privilege, thinking they know what's better for someone who has less. Mm-hmm. So it really was about charity and what that means. And I think it's incredibly relevant in today's world. So it's not about matchmaking, but it's about Emma thinking that because she has everything, she knows what will make Harriet happy, ignoring what will make Harriet happy. So it's more about power and what charity means. And we live in a world where billionaires are giving away their billions on their own terms, so we're living in, and GoFundMe can raise whatever amount of money for. So we're living in a world where charity is at a level that's never before been seen. So it becomes very, very relevant to know what that means. What are we trying to do every time we're charitable? We're trying to assuage our guilt for our privilege. We're trying to make the world a certain way that we think is okay. So the Emma Project, I think, is really about that aspect.
I'm trying to put a mental pin in that, because when we come back to the question about themes, I'm going to be like, okay, so you said, because it was so our fairy tale retelling in our group tonight. So this is so much fun because it brings together a beloved fairy tale, Beauty and the Beast, with the publishing industry. So what drew you to this fairy tale in particular, Jasmine?
I think it was a lot of fun to think of, because I grew up watching Disney movies, and it was a lot of, but I grew up watching Disney movies that I had a lot of fun with and always dressed up like a princess, but they were all about white girls who were princesses. Mm-hmm. So it was really exciting to write a, Black Disney princess kind of all grown up. And to have a different, more contemporary story for that, because as I loved Belle. Obviously I was a huge reader as a kid, and I was like, this is a princess who loves books, this is all me. But the actual story of her falling in love with the Beast, I'm like, that guy is that he puts her in prison, and then she falls. This is not how we're gonna do this. So it was fun to sort of think about how would these two people sort of come together. What would modern day Belle look like? Who would she be? What would she be working on, both sort of for our job, but also in the world, in her life. So that was sort of, there were a lot of questions for me coming in, which was a lot of fun to be able to work through and answer.
So that dovetails into the next question is, we call these retellings, but it's a very broad term, and mm-hmm. they're not necessarily, kind of scene by scene, character by character regurgitations of the originals. They're your own take. So how would you describe your retelling? How would you say what it is about it? And so your take on the source material, and then I would follow up, and you kind of led into that a little bit with how you were, there's no way she's going to be a prisoner who falls in love with her. So some of the ways that you were going to choose to alter your story.
Yeah, I think, for me, there were a few things. Number one, I wanted someone going in who didn't know anything about Beauty and the Beast to also enjoy this book, right? Because this is not just a story that you'll only if you like the source material. I want it to be a book that could stand on its own and have characters that felt like real people who were not necessarily tied to something else. But I did want there to be fun things in there for people who are big fans of the original. And so to kind of think about what that would be, but also to have I one of my biggest things coming into the book was that I wanted her to be able to make her own choices, because so many times, I sort of rewatched the movie kind of right before I started writing, and there is a lot in a lot of those old movies and fairy tales, there is a lot that sort of the heroine kind of gets forced into, and I didn't want her to get forced into things. I wanted her to be able to decide kind of what her own destiny was.
So you made sure, I think it sounds like an important element for you was to give her more agency.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So Sonali, we're going to come back. So I know like you've always done such a great job of talking about this, you know, and how your books are not retellings. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you would describe your Austen books?
More than I already did. So it's and I'll try to make this fast, so I don't take up too much of everyone else's time. But it was Pride and Prejudice obviously is about seeing people across, you know, our prejudices, because we meet people and generally they are holographic projections of, you know, what we want to see and not that person at all. And, you know, Pride and Prejudice was also called First Impressions. That was the original title of Jane Austen's book. So it was obviously going to be about navigating that. But I also wanted to examine privilege in immigrant communities, because we only see brown pain in literature, and we see poverty porn about South Asian stories specifically. And so I wanted to talk about brown privilege a little bit, and what that comes with and what that means as an immigrant. So it was also about owning, you know, a new home and making it your own. And political power is the final step in making a home your home, right? Because that means you're past all the initial struggles and you want to make decisions. And so that kind of was, and the gender flip was about trying to see if in, you know, 2019, we could drool over a woman who was so comfortable with her own arrogance and her own privilege, as we do for Mr. Darcy, who clearly is a jerk at, you know, the start of the book, and yet we are like.
So we're talking about your first book, Pride, Prejudice, and Other Flavors, and it so was
Emma was, you know, was the whole knowing. There's 4 to talk about. I already told you what intrigued me about Emma, and it was about haves thinking they know what's best for the have-nots, which I think we are very clearly seeing in today's culture.
Yeah.
So that's
I think it was, I remember when you first talked about that one too, and I think it's such a great idea to like, how would people respond to a woman, basically a woman Darcy, like, and how that all that entails. And there's definitely that you kind of dive into that whole like unlikable female thing that and unpacking that is always fascinating and also frustrating. So Nisha, how about you? You know, as far as your Shakespeare stories that you're working on, how would you describe them is in the terms of retelling?
I mean, I definitely wouldn't describe them as retellings. And I feel like it's because like the story doesn't deliver the same promise of the premise as the original. It's inspired by the major themes and beats of the original. But Taming of the Shrew is like an anti-feminist play. In the story, Petruchio abuses her in 3 different ways. He like starves her, he keeps her awake, he emotionally manipulates her until she agrees with his decisions. And like there's this big monologue at the end where and there's like 2 schools of thought about it, like if you look at like the way that scholars approach it, but it's like Kate either has submitted and is fully, you know, immersed into this like submissive woman's role that Shakespeare has written for the character, and then the other school of thought is that she is very aware of like how she needs to be and how she needs to act in order to get what she wants. So there's like multiple ways that you can look at it. And I did not want any of that. I wanted to flip the story in a way that made sense for me and for someone who like at 30 years old was consistently told I'm too independent and men will not appreciate my independence. And so, you know, and that's something that like you hear very often at 30 across like the am I getting the echo? Is that me?
It's gone now.
Somebody was all of a sudden, but it stopped.
Oh, it's done? Okay, great. But yeah, I mean, at 30, like I feel like a lot of women and a lot of people, not just women, but a lot of people get the whole like, you know, you're at a certain age, like you get comfortable with the way things are and you don't want to change and you need to lower your standards. And so, I never appreciated that school of thought. And that's kind of what I wanted to address with Taming of the Shrew. So I basically took these themes in Taming of the Shrew and I flipped them on its head. So it's definitely not, it's definitely not a retelling beat for beat. Like instead of like making the heroine sleep deprived, he's the only safe space that she feels like she can rest all night. And like he's always feeding her instead of starving her. And like he's the one who has to like change his point of view at the end of the story. So that's like the influence of the story, but it's, it definitely does not deliver on the same promise of that.
We're going to talk. Yeah. I love how you took these things that most bothered you about the original and actually went in the opposite direction. That's fantastic. So Chris, we haven't gotten to you yet. So yes, your turn.
So. And I'm going to say, I'm like in the middle of, I'm getting copy edits for my book too, and it's Taming of the Shrew. So I'm like, I'm trying to like turn to like think about Romeo and Juliet in this book, because
I did really like,
because similar to Nisha. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say what Nisha said about how, because the ending is often discussed as being what either she's submitted or she's figured out how to play the game. But either way, either solution is pretty depressing.
It sucks. Yeah. So like I watched Kiss Me Kate, and then I watched, anyway, that's like for another book. But each time I was like, no, right? So, for writing Kiss Me Catalina, but for West Side Love Story, and I was trying to remember like what was the exact question when you asked Jasmine, but it was like so long ago that I'm kind of like,
it's how would you characterize? Because like as Nisha said, I would not call these retellings.
Yeah, I think the word that I'm preferring to use is like a reimagining.
There you go.
Versus like a retelling. So like I love Romeo and Juliet, and I love the different the different adaptations, but I don't, and I love West Side Story, even, and there's an article that's coming out about the new version, which I prefer to the old. I don't know necessarily that we needed. The Steven Spielberg. I don't necessarily know that we needed a new adaptation of that. But since it's out there, there are some pluses in it that I prefer to the other one. I'm not gonna.
I feel like we could have an entire conversation just on I just want to kind of dive into that, but we won't, not right now.
No. But like I wrote an article about like the new Steven Spielberg's adaptation. And I will just say like for me, it's for me and Sonali kind of referred to it earlier, like every Brown story or every story about about the diverse population doesn't have to be about tragedy, doesn't have to be about all this evil stuff that happens, and it doesn't have to end in like West Side Story with Tony's dead body being carried off the street. It's a beautiful song, but however, right? And so for me that was like the what if, that all important author question, like what if, okay, I started with Romeo and Juliet, and then what if I segued into like West Side Story, but what if this happened, and what if, and so that's kind of what I wanted to like, yes, there's this conflict, but what I feel like all of our romances, at the heart of the romance is healthy relationships and healthy, with your partner, but also within your society, those that you're close to that help you get over those conflicts so that you can reach your happily ever after, knowing that in real life conflicts down the road, but if you're with the right person, like you're going to hit that conflict and you're going to be okay because you're going to get over it. And so I wanted like the themes of Romeo and Juliet, like those feuding familias and lovers that should not be lovers, and that attraction that is taboo. But how can you in today, since it's contemporary, how can you get past that? What can you do to work to find your happily ever after, or your happily for now? And for in my case, two Latino familias. How could you do that?
So that's definitely kind of my next question was, as far as the themes, and I feel like you answered it, but we can kind of circle it back to what you just said, the themes that were present in the original that you felt you wanted to carry through to your story. And that was the feuding families, but then the spin of how do we overcome that, and how do we,
like what is it? Like in mine, first it's the age old is that the patriarchs on both sides were on different sides of like property, and and so like gentrification, which and I'll be honest, I started off with Romeo and Juliet, but then as I learned more about gentrification in San Antonio, and I knew it was like over on the east side, but now it's moved to the west side, and so it just like clicked, like west side story, it just kind of fell into place. And so that's how the title became West Side Love Story, because that's where the familia lives, the Capuleta sisters. So it was, for me, the themes are about your ties to familia or family, and both of them are struggle like with that responsibility, but also like the ties to yourself, and how can you live up to familia expectations, but also be true to yourself. And that's what they have to figure out, throughout.
Nisha, did you want to talk a little bit about like the themes that were important to you that you kind of, that from the source material, but
Yeah.
like your theme is more about how you take flipping that, but you can talk a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, with Dating Dr. Dill, like I took the core concept of the Taming of the Shrew and those like major points that I was really attracted to, and the way that it translated to me personally was Petruchio was trying to get married for money, and Kate didn't want to leave her home. And so in Dating Dr. Dill, like there's this like need for money for the hero. Like he needs money, but he's building like a community center because I had to like make this man redeemable, right? And so he's building a community center. So like he needs money, and the heroine, like she's trying to save this home that she has this deep emotional connection with, because it was the home that her mom designed and built, and her father wants to sell it and move to Florida and golf, and she doesn't have the money herself to like put money down for a down payment. So like she's trying to save her home, and he's trying to like get this money. And so like that was how it translated for me. And then it evolved into this conversation about the nuances that exist between love marriages and arranged marriages. Because she truly believes in love, because her house was filled with love, the heroine. And Bram like believes in like the economy of marriage, and he believes in like open communication and open dialogue and the importance of like a like partnership, and he believes that it doesn't have to include emotion. And so there's like when and Sonali does this really well, and I think partly because Sonali and Falguni and some of the other authors that are writing today, the reason why I think we approach it with nuance is because like I had like a semi-arranged marriage and Sonali had an arranged marriage. So we understand that there's like gray areas in the discussion, right? And so I wanted to explore those gray areas from my particular experience, which is this modern conversation that's happening about arranged marriage and love marriage, and how both of them have really great merits. But there's also problems that still have to kind of unpack depending on the individuals involved in the situation. So that's how it kind of translated over from like Shakespeare 1500s to
it's like
modern day Jersey City.
Doesn't have everyone listening ordering every single one of these books already. Like I can't even like it's just, so Jasmine, how about you? Like what would you say? We talked a little bit about wanting to like kind of shift that. No, how you fall in love with someone who's kept you prisoner, but like what would you say is the theme for your book, and how that tied into the theme of the original fairy tale?
I think a lot of it is about kind of discovering who you are and what you want in life. And so I think at the beginning of the book, both Isabel and Bo are kind of, both of them are kind of feeling stuck. And they're in a place that they don't want to be, but they don't know how to get out, and they don't know how to like make choices that would help them. And so I think together they both like they help each other through that, and they both kind of figure that out. And it starts off as a kind of antagonistic relationship, but they kind of push through that and manage to kind of talk about things that they don't talk about to other people. And so I think it's kind of about like not just being true to yourself, but like figuring out what it is that you want, what it is that like, sometimes we build up things for ourselves that we like decided that we wanted a long time ago. And do I still want that? I don't know. Like, how do I tell this story about myself? Like, because I really know who I am? And so I think, you know, and kind of thinking through that and like thinking through who you are and who your family is and how that family has shaped you. There's sort of a lot of that in this book.
I think that's really powerful, that idea of, you know, that you've had these dreams of who you want to be, but then kind of coming to terms with that may no longer be the situation. So I think that's great. So Sonali, you did a great job telling us about the themes in Emma. I thought you really kind of, you know, drilled down on how it's relevant today. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that before I ask you my next question?
Yeah, I mean, with respect to this book, because I'm, you know, no, it's not, you know, it's not a social, it's not nonfiction about charity in today's world. It's essentially these two characters who are two, you know, rich kids who have been running around the world trying to fix it, and they're kind of obsessed with it. And she happens to have been his brother's girlfriend for all the world to see for 10 years. She is about 15, maybe 13 here, I'm forgetting, years older than her, because she is Knightley and he is Emma. And so this one is gender flipped too. And they both end up in a situation where they're fighting for the same funding, because there's a billionaire who is yanking their chains for sport and making them fight for this money. And so it's a lot of them realizing why, you know, why they do what they do, why they're obsessed with what they're obsessed with, and becoming slowly obsessed with each other. And so this is, compared to the other books, much hotter, you know, and much, I think, lighter, funnier, and hotter than the other books in the series.
Oh, so, hello.
Yeah, it's divine.
So just to remind everyone, we're going to so Sonali's book is The Emma Project, Nisha's book is Dating Dr. Dill, Priscilla's is West Side Love Story, and Jasmine's is By the Book. And again, all of the links are over on the Love Sweet Arrow website. So now we're gonna have a little bit of fun, and I wanted to ask Sonali, so what, you know, you talked about this being the hottest book in the series, and so what would you say what did you have the most fun with writing this book?
Okay. The hotness, the fact that they can't keep their eyes. You know,
I got Tourette's.
I mean, you have to think about in terms of, again, is this rapid fire? So should I just answer?
No, rapid fire. I don't know if we're going to get to the rapid fire, but we'll see.
Okay, so in terms of structure with Austen, the hero and heroine don't get together until the end. Emma is, you know, so sex became a problem because none of them get together until the end, and then it doesn't move the story forward, and therefore it's not in the book. Although there's a lot of sexual tension. And Emma, they know each other right from the beginning. They've known each other all their lives. They are, you know, for all practical purposes, family. So there's a lot of, you know, the attraction that they think they need to stay away from. And of course, Vansh being Vansh, he is not good at staying away from something he wants. And, you know, and so I hadn't written sex in like 3 books. So I was kind of really raring to go with this one. And I had so much fun with it.
All right. So everyone is clicking madly. Jasmine, what would you say was what did you have the most fun with on this book?
One of the things that I just had a lot of fun with in this book was sort of the, you know, because there was like sort of the Disney side to it. It wasn't quite that there was magic in the book, but there was sort of like, I wanted it to feel a little bit magical. And so there were just a little bit of touches that I kind of had fun with putting in there with like in the house, because they, you know, they're living in a house together for the bulk of the book. And so with like her sort of discovering what is in the house and all of the different places and who, you know, what she discovers and who is there. And so that was a lot of fun for me to write, and just like fun things that kind of felt exciting to me, I just kind of threw in there. And I feel like
you were like the fairy godmother as you wrote the book.
Exactly. I very much felt like a fairy godmother.
Nisha, how about you? What did you enjoy the most writing this book?
So this was like like many authors, we talk about like our pandemic book. So this was like my pandemic book, and I like was at the worst point, I think, like personally, professionally, like health wise, like when I had to write this book. I did not feel funny at all. So like I had a really great support group of author friends who told me to basically like write the things that I love into the story. And so there are like a bunch of Easter eggs in there that I think were my most like joyous parts of writing the story. So like there was like the terrible like messages from online dating apps. There was like the scavenger hunt first date, which is like based on a real date. You know, there's like the Indian hero wearing a black kurta, which like accentuates like his muscles, which is like our Henley, like the version of Henley. So, and like all like the heroine and her friends are like watching him swagger from like the bedroom window. Like
you just visualize this.
like those are like those fun moments that, and like also the tropey moments that I think as writers we read and giggled over when we were reading them the first time. Like, is the hero too big? Like these kinds of like hilarious moments.
It's just fun to embrace those, and you're lighting up talking about them, so I know they've got to be fantastic.
It was fun to write, and like I think those things that it reminded me like why I wanted to write in the first place, who I'm writing for, and what brought me joy. And so I think those moments in the story are my favorite in the book.
Great. Pris, how about you? What was the most fun?
I think mine are kind of a combination of Jasmine's and Nisha's, because in West Side Love Story, there are Easter eggs or little mentions of things that you won't know unless you're like my familia, that I'm excited for my tias and my primas, like my cousins, to find. Like I mentioned, there are different places that they go to that have special memories for our familia. Like something happens at a church, and at that church, it's where my dad's parents, so my grandma and grandpa, had their 50th wedding anniversary, and it was this huge thing, right? So I'm looking forward to, because in the past it's just been like in one of the Key West books, in An Island Affair, there was a golden doodle that I mentioned, and while my first daughter was reading it, I got a text message that was like, oh my gosh, Addie's in the book, right? that was our dog. And so I'm looking forward to those kind of like those moments that I know will kind of touch a chord in my familia. But I also tried, because like to challenge myself, there are moments or there are phrases from West Side Story that I wanted to try to drop in, but I told myself if I plan it, it's not going to be right. So just that were just like in the back of my mind from watching it so much, that when I was writing and like one came out, I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, it fits here. So there are little phrases from songs that are in West Side Story that kind of dropped in throughout, that were fun to kind of plan and realize that they weren't there. What?
I have some of those too. I did
yeah. And so like when that happened, like I literally was like, oh yeah, you know, and then kept typing. And so I think on both hands, like people who will, you know, who are West Side Story fans might catch those, and then things for my familia, you know, I'm excited for them to see
That's
those.
really special. That's great. So I wanted to make sure we give our audience a chance to ask their questions. So Danielle, you want to let us know?
Yeah, we've got a few. So there is one that's very specific for Jasmine. So I'm going to do that. It should be quick. Is Drunken Love an independent book, or will it be the start of a new series with different characters, or is it related to like your first batch of books?
We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, and then there are three more. One that was also sent to Jasmine, but I think everyone can answer this. It's when during the process did you know that your secondary characters in one book would become main characters in their own book? And how did you decide which ones would get their own story? So I think that's something everyone can answer.
And it actually rolls into, and you can answer this as well. I wanted to ask if you had other retellings that you're planning on writing, or, because we know, Sonali, this is number 4 of, you've done a bunch of retellings at this point, but so other retellings, when you mention secondary characters getting their own books, you might also drop in like, hey, I'm also doing a retelling of this. I think, Priscilla, you already gave us a hint that we're getting Taming of the Shrew from you next.
Yeah.
So we can start with you.
So usually, so like with my proposal, I had 2 books, and I have others, but will we go on in Shakespeare with the Capuletas? There are 9 sisters, but right now there are only 2. So I will say, usually when I'm starting a book, like I already have an idea, or my publisher has already, like bought X number. With my Match to Perfection series, it was a 3 books contract, so I knew the 3. What happens is usually whoever's going to come next, so whichever sister or whatever familia member. So in my Keys to Love series, it was Luis was the hero in book 1, and then Ana Maria. I tried to insert that character in like a couple key scenes so that hopefully the reader will kind of be in, and then drop some clues about like what their past conflict or what their hang up is going to be, so that hopefully the readers will come to like that character and will want to hear more. But I will tell you, in my debut novel, like before it had sold, like with my agent, one of the feedbacks in the early rounds of revision, she had told me there was a scene where the 2 other sisters were in it. And the heroine that I wanted to be book 2, my agent, the feedback was like, she's kind of boring. I really want to know about the other one. So if you want Rose's book to be number 2, like we need more Roses. So I like totally took Lily out of the scene and just kept her in it and like changed, right? So thank God for my agent. But usually I have an idea of which one. And then I just, again, naturally try to insert them in the story so that the reader will become more familiar and then hopefully want to know more about them. So they're waiting for their story.
Something that I think that's a pretty
So same thing. So like in West Side Love Story, Catalina is the next sister. She is the sounding board. She's in some important scenes with Mariana, like talking about Angelo and what's going on.
And then we're going to see her next in the
and her hero, who is Patricio Petruchio, is in book 1 as well, in a kind of key role as well. So you meet both of them in book 1.
Okay, so Nisha, moving, because you have Taming of the Shrew now. So do we get hints of who we're going to see next, and what is our next retelling? Maybe give us a sneak peek.
Do you know, I was so disappointed, like no one picked it up, and I was like, maybe it's just me. And then one fellow Shakespeare nerd like messaged me and was like, I picked up the hint, I know who it is. And like that made it all worthwhile. So I introduced all my characters up front. I sold the book as a trilogy. I wanted it to be a trilogy. I get really exhausted with like a theme after like 3 books. So at the 3rd book, I'm like, I'm good. The second book is going to be inspired by Much Ado About Nothing. And we see Bobby and Bunty in book 1. And the like snippet that I had dropped that no one picked up on other than one other person was like, the hero says the word disdain. And she's like, who says that these days? And it's from like that really famous line in Much Ado About Nothing, my lady disdain, and no one got it. So I'm very disappointed in Romancelandia. I'm just saying. But I can't wait. Jasmine, by the book, this is I don't like calling it a one-off, but it's like kind of, it's not going to be a series, but in other books you've definitely had characters and things like that. So how would you address the question?
Everybody else planned it way better than I did. As like The Wedding Date was, my first published book. That was like where I got my first deal with my agent. And so as I was writing The Wedding Date, there's a there's a scene sort of a third of the way into the book where Alexa's two best friends are on the page together for the first time at a birthday party. And I remember writing that scene and being like, oh, these two are going to hook up later tonight. And so like, I knew that I wanted to write that book. But so when I got the deal for the wedding date, my agent was like, well, do you have ideas for more books? And I had outlines for two others. And it was actually funny because of when, with Priscilla talking to agents, like when I talked to agents about the wedding date, they asked me like what I have the next one was going to be. And I was like, oh, I had this idea, there's a scene the way through. And they were like, okay, that's nice. We like those characters, but what about Carlos? And I was like, oh, Carlos, like, okay. I mean, Carlos is good, but I didn't really, and they were like, think about that. And then I actually hadn't had, when I got my deal with the agent, like I hadn't had the idea for the proposal, and that came sort of in between going on submission and like getting the deal. And so I had outlines for both the proposal and the wedding party. And so my editor was like, I want that one, the proposal, I want that one next. So we sold that as a 2-book deal, and then the wedding party came next. But I actually hadn't planned. I had thought that next was going to be that after the wedding party was going to be a book about Alexa's sister. And then I had the idea for Royal Holiday, and then so it ended up as 6 books, which I didn't plan at all. I thought it was going to be 3, and then it ended up as 6, and so there was a little bit of knowledge, and then a little bit of just like, what about this person? But it's more for me about like secondary characters. Like it's more about, because I sort of love all of my secondary characters, and I would happily write a book about each one. For me, it's more about having the right idea to go with the right character. So that's why, because I had brainstormed some ideas about Carlos like early on, but none of them felt right. And then as soon as I had the idea for the proposal, I was like, that's it, that's Carlos's book. But it sort of sometimes it takes a while to get the right idea for like knowing who, especially once you know who that character is, it took a while.
Or can I jump in real fast? Or even I would say, like, I've sold a 3-book, and by the time I get to writing the 3rd book, that character and like the initial idea might have changed as I got to know that character better in the first 2 books. So you might even think you have the right idea, and even your publisher could say, okay, yeah. But then by the time you get to writing their story, as they have evolved through the first 2 or 3 or however many, the story has changed somewhat as well.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Olivia's book, which ended up being Party of 2, the proposal that I sent my editor, which was, like 2 years right before I wrote the book, was completely different. Like the only thing that was the same was like at the beginning she moved back to California, and then the rest of it was totally different. And like I remember having a conversation with my editor sort of right before we were like together at a conference, and it was kind of right before I was about to start writing that. And we had sold that was sort of the first book of another deal. And so I had said, oh, well, when we got that deal, we didn't really talk about which book would be first. And she was like, write whichever one you're most excited about. And I realized that I wanted to write a book about Olivia, but I was not at all excited about the proposal that I'd written up. And I was like, I have a new idea. And so I sort of like took 2 weeks and like wrote it up and sent her proposal, was like, what do you think about this? And luckily she loved it. It was great. Nice. But like, yes, my ideas for the character and what I wanted to write kind of changed a lot.
Yeah.
So Sonali, you're kind of at the end of the road of the Austin retellings. What would you say about incorporating, like you said, like I knew the Dashwoods and the Darcy's, they're all kind of meet in the same world. And then also, do you feel like anything changed from where you first started this to here you are now at the end?
Yeah, so I wrote down all 4 story ideas. Like there was something very organic about those ideas coming to me related to these 4 Austen novels that I was thinking about. The only one, and they've changed since then, but the core idea has kind of stayed the same, except for the Emma project, which when I think when I was in book 2, I kind of knew, but it was not it was going to be Isha's book, who is the oldest cousin. And it still is, the subplot is Isha, and it's what it was going to be. But if I had known, and Nisha and I have had a conversation about this, where if I had known Vansh was going to be a hero, I would not have called him that. I would have paid more attention to his name.
Really? He just seems Vansh, though.
Saying, how does that work when they're having sex? You remember that conversation? Like, nobody needs to be saying, "Oh, Vansh." Like, how does that work?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like I pulled Sonali's leg like for quite a bit of time. I was like, it rhymes with munch. It rhymes with munch.
Sonali, I wrote a book where the secondary character was I used my brother's name,
Oh,
and then I made him a hero.
No.
And then I had to apologize to everyone in my family and let them know how sorry I was to have done that to them. No, horrible.
I only use family member names for like nice characters. Like in one of my books, someone was really ugly, and her name was my cousin's. And when I realized I needed her to be ugly, I like changed the character's name. I was like, I cannot use my cousin's name for like a mean character.
I only use family members' names for like little throwaway characters. Yes. So like the two waiters who were named this walk by, and I will sort of throw that in as like a break for my family. But I don't. But no one who will ever come back.
So, like, fun story.
My brother is never having sex on the page in my book, like ever. It's never happened.
Oh my gosh!
Maybe if there are any aspiring authors watching, don't do it. Don't name heroes or heroines after family members. Let me tell you.
So what I will say is, like, naming wise, like something that I did, I think I like was like one of the smartest moves is I have like all 4 of the meddling aunties in my series named after like South Asian romance writers writing today. So like Sonali is in there, and like Falguni is in there, Farah Heron and Mona Shroff are all in there. And like Sonali works the Crocs.
I want to see like a picture. You guys need to dress up, and I want
yes, the 4 of you need to get together.
So, we are over time, and I don't want to keep anyone too long. So are we okay if we take just a few more minutes? Is everybody good for a few more minutes? Yeah. Okay. So I just want to make sure before we let's take one more question.
Well, I want to do your rapid fire questions because they're really fun.
Okay. So rapid fire, and again, audience, you are welcome to join in the fun and answer these as well. Rapid fire, there is no thinking about it, there is no talking about it, there is your answer, and that's it. If I had a buzzer, I'd buzz you. Okay, so rapid fire questions. Favorite movie soundtrack? Nisha.
Oh my God. Okay, off the top of my head, it would have to be oh my gosh, Twilight.
Sonali.
English Top Gun, baby.
Oh, that's good.
That's good one.
That's so good.
Danielle.
The Baz Luhrmann Romeo and Juliet.
Ooh, Angelina.
Oh, that's good.
The Baz Luhrmann Moulin Rouge. Holy shit, Danielle. This is why we do a show together.
Okay, this is probably not my all-time favorite, but this is the most recent one I can think of. What's the movie with Hugh Jackman that was recent where he was the
Big Top. The big, like he's like the ring. Barnum Circus.
It's called The Greatest Showman, but somebody in the audience.
Yeah.
The movie itself is a little weird, but the soundtrack.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll be honest. And my first soundtrack that came to mind is a K-drama.
Okay.
It's called Our Beloved Summer.
What's the name of it?
Our Beloved Summer. And you can find it on YouTube. But it's great writing music.
Yeah, and then we've got really good answers in the chat. So we had Footloose from Pam.
Yes.
Jenna suggested Easy A. That was that Emma Stone movie from a while ago. Hope Floats, Last of the Mohicans.
I don't
for the
soundtrack. I'm curious now.
Yeah.
I used to listen to a lot of movie soundtracks, like A Walk in the Cloud. These are old ones. Like A Walk in the Cloud is really beautiful music to watch. Not the movie itself, but the soundtrack is beautiful music to write to.
Yeah. Last Mohicans, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is really good. Pride and Prejudice. Yeah, these are great. Yeah. And then
And my favorite is kind of random. It is Hackers, the movie Hackers from the 90s. It is an amazing soundtrack.
I couldn't even name a song off of that. I feel like I'm gonna have to go Google that now. I'm gonna have to go Google that, Melanie.
And 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yes.
Yeah. I do. That also is a good soundtrack. So
there is a YouTube video of from The Greatest Showman, the singer who sang "This Is Me."
That's the best song on the soundtrack. It's so good.
Have you seen the YouTube where they presented that song to Hugh Jackman? The singer presents it to Hugh Jackman, and that song really encapsulates all of her insecurities. Yeah. And they said, we want you to present it to Hugh Jackman. And she was like, absolutely not. But then on the day they filmed it, and you can see her nerves, and she starts singing, and all the background singers, and then she kind of moves aside the podium. And I'm putting it in the chat, in our chat right now, Danielle.
Okay, I'll share it. Yeah.
If you want to be absolutely empowered and like cry in the best ways, watch this video, because it is so amazing. And Hugh Jackman reacts to her singing.
Oh, I gotta watch it.
And he starts tearing up too. It is like if you like a down day, this is the thing to watch.
That song was on my playlist when I wrote by the book.
It's such a phenomenal song, and this is
very much
inspiring.
It very much is sort of part, the themes of the book come in the song.
I'm so glad. No, I watch it every time I want to cry and feel inspired.
Can I ask if anybody knows if this is the soundtrack? But earlier today, my first daughter and I went to an exercise class, and one of the songs that they played was like a cinematic version of Survivor, like I'm a survivor, right? And we were trying to figure out like where that was from, and some other ladies talking afterwards were like, was that in 50 Shades? And I'll be honest, I haven't seen that. So I was wondering if anybody knows it. So it's like a really cinematic, it was so empowering. I was like, I need to start every writing day with this song, because while we were exercising, I was like, yeah, I was sweating, and I was like, is this over yet? But mentally, I was like, I got this. But I don't know where it's from.
If there's a song on a TV show that I just Google it, you'll find it.
Yeah. And I think did one of the later Pitch Perfects do in a Survivor? I don't know.
This you could tell it was like Beyonce, so it wasn't like someone else singing it. But I thought maybe someone here, because if it was 50 Shades, someone would be like, yes. But I'm gonna Google it.
All right.
It was really an empowering, like girl power.
Yeah.
I actually have to run. I'm really sorry.
No, we're over time. So thank you. Okay. Before you go, can you share with us your favorite Disney movie?
Oh, I will say my two favorites growing up, I cannot choose between them, were Cinderella and Snow White. Yeah. Okay. Big fans of both of them.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Jasmine.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun.
Bye. Good to see you.
Bye. Bye. So Jasmine's going, and we'll wrap this up now, since lightning rounds are impossible with a group of authors. But I will finish up with that question. So your favorite Disney movie, and if you're like, maybe you have a favorite Disney villain that you can tell us about instead. So Angelina?
Robin Hood.
Ooh, very nice. Danielle?
I'm gonna go with my favorite Disney villain, and it's Maleficent. She just needed to be, they should have just invited her to the party, and everything would have been fine. There would have been no curse. It would have been great. So yeah.
Is Lion King Disney?
It is. It actually also is a Shakespeare retelling. Lion King is Hamlet.
It's Hamlet.
But so much better.
It is true. Simba is a better Hamlet.
I mean, it's like so much better in theory, but like there were only two dudes in Pride Rock. So like Nala and Simba are related.
Right.
This is true.
We're not going to get down to the nitty-gritty.
The details. There's talking lions. We're good.
The incest revelation in Lion King. You didn't heard it here first.
I'll say when one of my girls realized I was writing Romeo and Juliet and they weren't going to die, and she's like, "You can't do that." I said, "Look, Disney did it with Hamlet and The Lion King, so we can do it."
I have to do this when I say Lion King.
Awesome. Priscilla, how about you?
So my favorite Disney, I would probably say Little Mermaid, although Beauty and the Beast is a really close second.
Angelina? Oh, you said Robin Hood.
I'll say it again, Robin Hood, the best.
Nisha.
The sexiest animal ever.
Nisha, did we get yours?
I really struggle with this question. And like, I mean, I know it's rapid fire, but like, I really do, just because like, I feel like when I watched Pocahontas for the first time, I went and I took out the autobiography. And when I discovered what Disney did to that story, like I felt so betrayed. And I have never looked at a Disney movie the same ever since.
That's fair.
And so what I will say is that Disney did their first like cinematic blockbuster where they funded it, produced it, everything in Bollywood in 2015. And it was called Khoobsurat, which is a remake of like a 1970s version of the movie. But it was like a doctor who went to this like castle to like do physical therapy work with this this old curmudgeon king, and she falls in love with his like prince son. And so if I had to pick a Disney movie, I'd like to consider that one. And I would
say the title again.
It's called Khoobsurat, so it's I'll like put it in the chat.
That's fantastic. So Little Mermaid has always got a special place in my heart.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's nothing to do with the redhead or anything. But I do also really love Tangled. I think that one was so smart and funny.
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah. Tangled is
So
really
we
good.
do have to wrap things up. If you haven't had a chance to check out our authors' books, make sure you go to Love Sweet Arrow and do that. And that's pretty much it. The Boozy Book Bras will be taking next month off, but we will be back in May with another fun panel. We'll tell you more about that later. So anything else before we wrap up for the night from anybody?
No, just thank you to Love Sweet Arrow for hosting, and thank you, ladies. It was lots of fun.
Thank you so much. It was
Yeah.
wonderful coming
Really
out.
good to
Thanks
see
so
you
much
guys.
for
Thank
being
you for
here.
being with us.
Vanessa,
Danielle?
Stephanie.
Yeah,
Anything else?
we are. I think we're good. We good?
Okay.